Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast episode number 76. Welcome again, and we have another very interesting topic on this podcast, which is getting out of architecture. I had on a podcast the two Harvard graduates, entrepreneurs, architects, and designers, Erin Pellegrino and Jake Rudin. Jake and Erin studied at Harvard, as I said, and at some point they noticed that there were some really rotten or some really disappointing aspects of an architectural career, which are always the long over hours, extra hours at work, ending up doing work that is not as creative as what we are taught at the university, and that disappointed them so badly that they decided to do something. And first of all, they changed their own industry and field of expertise. So now Erin has her own creative studio, and it's called Matter. And Jake moved to the different kind of design. He's working in Oregon at the Adidas design team. And they decided after they did their own path to help other people. And they found in 2018 their own consultancy company, a career consultancy company for architects and designers, which are already in the professional field, or for students that want to change path in the middle of their studies. And yes, they help other people, and this is how they find purpose in their mission. I connected to them through LinkedIn because Jake posted something that I really agreed with, and this is how we connected. So I want to disclaim one more time that this is not something that they pay me to do. I just thought it was interesting to talk to them, and so it might look like a little bit of commercial maybe, because I asked them a lot about how they do it, what it costs to consult the people, and so on, what are their workflow and approach. But it's not a commercial. They never actually, I approached them to be on the podcast because I thought what they do is interesting. And you have to take your own opinion about if this is something worth it for you, if you're in that situation or not. So yes, that's it. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast and to taking this time. And I want to remind you that I would be happy to be hearing from you wherever you're based, for whatever reason you're listening. Feel free to text me on the creativeinsider.com. There is the contact form at the hello@thecreativeinsider.com email, or on our Instagram account at TCI Podcast. If you text me, I might answer, or Désirée might answer. And also you can join our community at the LinkedIn page, The Creative Insider. And yes, we really would be enjoying to hearing from you, because we see there are a lot of listeners from the States, from other parts of the world. And yes, it would be very interesting. Another thing that I want to remind you is that now, if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, there are some new functionalities. If you scroll down, you can find a question you might answer, which it will be something like a comment section, or another option would be that there will be some sort of questionnaire. So check out that if you're on Spotify. Yeah, and basically that's it. Those are the most important things I wanted to say. Thank you very much, and enjoy the conversation with Jake Rudin and Erin Pellegrino from Out of Architecture.
The whole world stops just like that.
Let's get started.
Yes, or the worst case scenario, if we're really into a very important topic, maybe we finish the two of us as it fits. I'll try to keep it short because generally it takes a little time.
No problem. I'm sure that we'll have a good conversation even in an hour and 15. So
yes, I'm pressing start recording and everything seems all right. I'm recording also the audio just on my, I have a mixer here next to me so that we have double recording in case of anything goes wrong. I'm going to say hi again and so that I can then cut it off, all this conversation now. And after I say bye in the end, it's really important that you don't close right away this website because you're recorded on your side and it uploads everything and then I can download it. So if you close it right away, there is the risk that whatever is recorded on your side is going to get lost.
Okay.
Good to know.
excellent reminder.
So hello, Jake. Hello, Erin. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Hi, Georgi. It's really good to be here. Yeah, we're doing excellent. It's a beautiful day here in Portland, and Erin's over, I think, in Massachusetts right now.
It's a very nice day here as well. Martha's Vineyard.
This is the most scattered podcast that I have ever had because usually I have intercontinental chats with some people from everywhere around the world, but now it's like from 3 different locations, even cooler. And I want to say a little bit the story about how I found about you guys. I was, scrolling my LinkedIn feed, and then I saw a post from Jake about a job at OMA, and about the fact that the like that always write that you should be not into the 9 to 5 mentality. And he has written something that I couldn't write better and just reshared it. And this is how I got to know about you, and then I went on your website and so on. But from here, you can tell a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the public and say who you are and what you do.
Sure. I think it's an interesting talking point to start with this idea that, I have, maybe developed some discord with the architectural community or with the standard lens of viewing, architectural passion. But there's a huge backstory to it that, involves a love affair with architecture and architectural education, and the story of how Erin and I became friends and developed this business that is, entitled Out of Architecture. And I think the backstory there is something that we can definitely get into in more detail. But as a brief summary, we're both architecturally educated professionals. We have our professional degrees, Bachelor's of Architecture from Cornell University. We studied there and spent a lot of time during that degree focusing on the nuances of becoming really creative architects. And during that time, we also began to notice some discordant elements of the way that the industry kind of treats the value of creativity, and in some ways exchanges it for things like opportunity to work on passion projects, let's say. And so there was a number of these elements that came up over the career. Erin and I took slightly different pathways beyond our undergraduate degree, though we both went to Harvard Graduate School of Design. I studied a Master of Design Technologies and focused on computational design, robotics, coding, and from there went to work at a technology startup in Boston as the director of business development. So almost nothing to do with my initial intention to become an architect, but it still had some work in spatial dynamics. It was a virtual education startup. And through that, I learned that my architectural skills, my experience, were applicable in so many other ways. And I then took those skills to my current company, Adidas, where I run a computational design team, as well as a team of makers and pattern engineers, and essentially focus on manufacturing innovation. So it's been a circuitous path, but certainly something that I've enjoyed and am looking forward to talking about in some more detail.
So Erin, and how about you? What is your background? What you do currently? Where are you based?
Yeah, so I'm based all over the northeastern United States for the most part. I live and work in New York City, in Manhattan specifically. But so my practice is called Matter, where I have essentially a small studio that focuses on architectural furniture and graphic design, which bleeds into sort of brand and strategy as well. And that's sort of my day job, in addition to this passion project that I have with Jake Rudin. But our work tends to kind of take us all over the northeastern United States, which is great because with Out of Architecture, we also get to just meet people from all over the world and have these great conversations. I know we started this conversation as well with this post, right, that Jake had put up with this sort of issue around OMA and pay within architecture firms and the sort of demanding work hours. And I think it all sort of coalesces and aligns with our vision of, redefining what it means to be an architect and changing the way the profession treats people, values itself, values design. I teach design at a lot of different institutions, and I also teach a class called Professional Practice, which really looks at ways that we can, ethically practice. And I think both my design practice and my partnership with Jake here really lends two hands into that thinking and trying to, I think, reimagine what practice will be like in the future and redefine the term architect in the future.
Yeah, I loved really the concept about Out of Architecture because I always like to say that I like the US, although I've never been there, because there are a lot of people like you that do these unconventional practices, and they find the way to do new things, different things. And for me was like really funny because I wanted to join one of those big offices, but I couldn't because I don't come from a family that could have afforded to help me maintain myself and work just for the matter of working for someone. And I found a job which was actually paying me well enough so that I could be independent. And that was, so I kind of got out of that kind of architecture. And I went to the more traditional one, or the most, so to say, pointed on the masses. But how did you come up with this idea to start this consultancy project or business?
Erin and I have been friends since the very first year of architecture school. And this is a story that we've told many times, but it involves building a very large dragon as an early ritual to our Cornell education. We're given a week to essentially take off from classes and spend the week constructing a massive 50-foot long structure that resembles, an ancient beast, and paraded around campus to kind of prove, in essence, that we can do anything that we set our minds to in the creative field. And Erin and I approached that both as a creative challenge with our peers, but also as a business. And I think it was our very first foray into, all right, how do we take something, that is a challenge? How do we take something where our skills can be applied in a very valuable way? And how do we turn that into a successful endeavor, both with the people around us, so organizing and orchestrating a construction crew, and also with a monetary goal in mind. So the money that comes from this processional is acquired by creating T-shirts and selling them around campus, and that money goes to funding alcoholic binge drinking for many, many years to come. No, I think in all seriousness, it's a party fund, and it's a cultural stepping stone that comes from, being able to do something really meaningful that engages people beyond your creative practice. So we became friends doing that. And we had a business in one form or another for many years after that. Sometimes it was doing architectural projects. We got to work on a tea house in upstate New York for a client. We got to work on one of Richard Meyer's very early house projects, doing a renovation for a really lovely couple that had a connection to Cornell University. And throughout that time, we constantly checked in with each other on these issues that we were experiencing, issues of pay equality, issues of trying to explain the value that a creative mind brings to a tangible problem. And it sort of began this journey where in each of our steps, we were asking these questions of, why does the architectural profession treat its employees with sort of such a level of irreverence? I think for the listeners who don't have an understanding of what it means to be an architect, there's a long conversation there. But in general, I don't think the majority of people in the world really understand what architects do or what they're capable of. Most people see architects as these sort of either mathematicians or engineers or artists. But the truth is that they are really none of those things. Architects are human-centered designers. They're creative problem solvers who can solve things at all scales using an incredible variety of tools, whether it's visualization, model making, 3D modeling, CAD, whatever it is. And those skills are so valuable in so many other industries. Georgi, you had a guest on who was doing CGI for the automotive industry, and those skills are explicitly valued there. We have a friend of ours who does work for ad agencies, and they pay immensely for beautiful visuals to sell products. And yet architects are sort of expected to do that for their own work. So there's a valuable set of skills here that architects are doing in the service of the built environment. And the way that ends up turning out for architects is actually not how I think most people might think. It's an honorable profession. I think people would think, wow, it must pay very well, and you must get a lot of value out of it. And that's really not true for the most part. It's a poor business model, and I think most of the work is done in service of creative beauty and aesthetics. And so we end up exchanging, high salaries for a high level of creative satisfaction. However, I don't think that the majority of architects, either listening to this podcast or out there in the world, would say that they feel fully creatively satisfied in their roles. So the idea going through school was you'd come out, you'd feel really strongly about the work that you were doing, passionate about it, engaged, and you'd go work for a firm. And even if you were a starving artist, you'd be satisfied, you'd be fulfilled. And that wasn't the experience that Erin and I had. And that was kind of maybe the first step to forming this business.
I see.
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot to be said for all of the different skills and relationships and things that you learn in architecture school. And one of those things, which is a little bit of a double-edged sword, is this difference between your passion and your work. And I don't think architects really think, or designers, and maybe I won't speak for everybody, but I'll certainly speak for myself. I absolutely loved the work I was doing in studio as a student, and even sometimes non-academic work, right? We got to play around in the wood shop. Jake mentions we built a dragon. We also built a myriad of other kind of pieces of furniture and Christmas ornaments and all of these things. And to me, it never felt like work. Right. And I think school is always very you focused. It's something where, you discover what you're good at, you discover what you're not good at, right? You work quite hard, and it always feels like you're kind of nurturing this passion. But there is very much a disconnect when you enter the working world. And of course, it no longer becomes about you, which is, I think, fine. And that hits every college student like a large dose of cold water. But at the same time, all of these skills that you nurture and develop, and that's not just, hard skills or technical skills like different softwares or the ability to be an excellent craftsperson, but soft skills like team management and time management and just people management, managing up, making sure your professors understand what you're saying and managing their sort of moods and daily eccentricities, managing down, working with students below you, because I think in architecture school, or at least the one we went to, there was very much a large mentorship model. You learn so much in terms of how to, as Jake mentioned, problem solve, but also just how to manage. And then you go out into the world, and there is very much this kind of paying your dues model in architecture, where there's a whole lot of things that you still have to learn. And that, I think, is still excellent, right? To learn certain skills within the context of a real project, within the context of a well-established team. However, this mentorship model in a lot of ways is also quite broken. A lot of the ways that firms are run, no one has really all that much time to mentor you or to teach you the ways in which you could be most effective within a firm. And what we tend to see, especially with a lot of our clients who fall within the 5 to 7 year range of being out of school, is this insane burnout, because you have this confluence of people who are incredibly talented and very hard workers, just spinning their wheels, trying to make something work and trying to make this process and this thing that they've toiled after exist within a professional career. And, there's also a whole matchmaking thing about going to work for potentially the right firm and whatnot. But I do think there is a gap with the amount of kind of good mentors out there and good firms that sort of mentor students and young professionals into the profession with, what we sort of put up on a pedestal as the offices you should want to work for. It's interesting that this whole thing starts with an OMA post, because our architecture school was designed and built by OMA. We grew up, we actually watched the building go up as we were first and second years. And then we finished our professional degrees in an OMA building, all the while thinking that, wow, if I got to work there, how amazing would that be? But then I think, you put the other shoe on and you realize that there's a whole side to what you're taught to sort of revere, and whether or not that is a sustainable, ethical, and, even just sustainable for the profession business practice. And that's what I think Jake and I are interested in challenging, but also more so, we talk to such amazing people every day that come from all different corners of the world that are really passionate about what they do and have a myriad of skills and interests that if they could go out in the world and execute upon those things with the passion that they have, we're just absolutely making the world a better place based on, just where they tend to find their passions and where they can go and do good. And that's what I think really keeps us going and what excites us about the work we do out of architecture.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I think that everybody have to experience some sort of a shock. And I think that in the business of architecture, it's maybe more evident because you get involved into a process that it's so huge and involves so many players. Like, as you said, in the university, no matter where around the world you are, you generally play the architect, or as I like to say, it's a little bit like driving school. They teach you how to drive, but when you go on the street on your own, it's a little bit different. And then you're involved into this massive process where if you work especially on a bigger company, you have to do something that's often not so creative. Even if you're part of some competition team or something like that, there will be always some head of design that will just give you the task that you need to draw or something like that. But I'm curious, let's say I'm a person, like one thing that also characterized every creative and every architect is that we started this path towards architecture and studying architecture, becoming architects, because we have this, the goal is also, you start feeling what you are. So at some point saying out of architecture is also disrupting who you are. But like, I don't know, all the kinds of services that you offer, I see that maybe out of architecture doesn't need to be out of architecture. Maybe it will go a different architecture. But how do you approach this thing? Let's say I'm a guy that feels a little bit lost in my career, and I come to you guys and I say, hey guys, like I've been doing this for now 12 years, let's say, or 10 years. And I feel lost. I feel unfulfilled. Although maybe I should be happy where I am, but I feel unfulfilled. Where do I start?
Well, I think we try to treat careers in the same way that we treat problems in the rest of design. So we treat your career as a design problem, and we talk about what are the most important aspects of it to you. I think that creative fulfillment is a small, sometimes a very big portion of somebody's career goals. Oftentimes, though, there's other aspects of life, right? Maybe it's a city that you want to be in. Maybe there's, a salary that you're trying to get, or a certain standard of living. Maybe it's a kind of project or an industry that you have a big passion over. I think these are all options. And the way that we go about this with clients is very one-on-one. So we take our clients on through first and kind of introductory call where we get to learn a little bit about them. And I think even in a very brief period, 10, 15 minutes, the beauty of having gone through this ourselves is we have a kind of immediate connection. Even you and us, Georgi, you understand what it's like to go through an architectural training. Like, we don't have to necessarily talk in depth about the experiences of studio, the experiences of what it means to go through a structural course, and how late you have to be in studio to complete your projects and all of these things. So when we meet with clients, there's a deep understanding of what it means to be working together. And what we do for the most part is we start at that early visioning phase. We talk about where, what are some pathways that you might be interested in, and break down that term architect into a set of other skills. So there's a huge variety of pathways for architects. It could be furniture design, industrial design. It could be going and working for real estate or working for a big company. You could be doing retail design. A lot of designers want to go into UX, UI. They want to move into tech. They want to go all over the place. And these are all pathways that are available to us as architecturally educated individuals. So first thing we do is we help you separate yourself from that term. You're not just an architect, right? You are much more than that. You're a set of experiences. But I think once you've been in the profession for 10 years, 12 years, that window that you maybe had in school of, oh my gosh, I can go off and, not only design a building, but I could do an entire city or a park, or that window closes, I think, quite a bit. And so we try to first help our clients to kind of reopen that window to think about where their skills might also be beneficial, where they might really have an interest. And then there's a number of other places that we support in that process. It could be working on, application materials. It could be finding the right kind of open roles. And those roles are, as you mentioned, sometimes not just outside of architecture. Architecture itself is a relatively diverse profession in the way that roles are being dictated. So you could have computational design positions. You could have positions that are in, very structural or spec related or code related elements. So there's a number of specialties, and sometimes finding a company that values your specialty is a great first step. We like to say that it's not only getting out of architecture, but also what you get out of architecture. Where from the architectural profession do you get fulfillment? And I think those discovery phases then often lead us to some pretty actionable items. We do a lot of helping clients to network and connect with the right kinds of companies. You would be surprised how easy it is to reach out to someone on LinkedIn, to provide just the right amount of information, show the right interest, and ask the right questions. And I think if you do that, you have an opportunity then often to tell your story to that person. And that's kind of the last thing that we help our clients do, is we help them to tell that story. So whether it's framing their architectural professional background in a way that supports their future goals, or whether it's just kind of framing their skill sets for themselves to be able to, instead of saying, this is the circulation of this project, the client requested this kind of finish, these are the facade details, to talk more in depth about the skills that Erin mentioned earlier. So this is how I supported the project management. This was my coordination with all of the various contractors and the clients. We managed the budget and the stakeholders in this way. This was the timeline, and here was my involvement, in addition to my creative skills, that I built this branding around the project in order to sell this specific aspect of it. So we do this work with clients over the course of many sessions, but it's something that relatively without fail puts them in a better position in their career. And we've had a lot of clients who come to us at stages, like you mentioned, 10 to 12 years, but also as early as still being in school and as late as having been running their own practice for over 20 years. So it's been a really interesting exploration of this question that you posed. And I guess I would return the question with, are you looking to change? Are you looking for some support?
No, I'm not looking for some support. I can say in my personal experience that I think that nowadays we have a lot of information, and we are part of completely different generation that our parents. And I come from Bulgaria, which I always like to say, like I was born in the 90s in Bulgaria, but it's like being born in the 80s somewhere in western of the world. And I think that everybody who have ambition in their life, once they join the professional world after architecture school or any kind of school, I think they have to experience some sort of, maybe they experience some sort of, I don't know how to call it, maybe depression, or not depression, but fear, because you suddenly on this sort of the university and everything to arrive like to the job, it's like a mountain road. It's all exciting, it's all corners, it's all, you're trying to get to somewhere, and then suddenly you go on a highway once you start a job, because you see your daily life, like, okay, this could be my daily life from now to when I finish working. So you experience, I personally have experienced that, and then I thought, okay, but I don't want to be like somebody that's sitting on his safe job, even if it's not crazy hours, and just waiting for my time to go into retirement comes, maybe find a mortgage or something, buy a house and stuff like that. And this is how my out of architecture is this podcast, because I thought, okay, what I like to do, and it's very hard to, the first step of doing something different, it's very hard to understand how to start, where to start, what are the first steps, and how to build upon. And this is probably the hardest thing to be more aware. And this is what I'm curious about. Like, if somebody comes to you with this issue that they want to start something different, they want to develop themselves in something different. Is it also like a project that has a timeline? Because let's say I want to make computer graphic art, or I want to become I don't know, a marketing person or whatever. I don't know. I can be very qualified as an architect, but I'm not qualified as whatever I want to become. So how do you start consulting your clients into becoming aware if they really want that? Because also one other issue is, do I want to become something else, or just, I don't know, being spoiled because I don't want to be into this hard situation? So what is your opinion about this?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you highlight some of the issues that we speak about with a lot of our clients. And there's a few points to touch on here, so I'm going to try to get into all of them. The first is, and I think Jake touched on this a little bit, but it is often hard for clients to disassociate with that term architect, to say that, oh, I'm quitting, right? It's sort of like quitter's mentality. And I really don't see that as the case, right? I actually, Jake and I feel similarly about this, which is that you come out of school, you come out of your training, you come out of your professional experience with such a vast amount of skills, but you've always told that story of who you are under the noun and under the title of architect. So a lot of the work we do with clients is really working with them on their narrative, their personal narrative. That's both outward facing, so speaking to people about who they are and what they do, but it's also inward facing, understanding that, okay, this is going to be a bit of a different process, right? It's not going to be the same type of job search that you would find typically in architecture, which is often very network-based, right? Not always the case, but very often it is. And this is actually going to be a bit of a process of figuring out what your value is in the context of another field or an architecturally adjacent field, where you have to explain your passions and who you are and how you can adapt to a team. Now, some of those fields are fields that we work with quite often. So, Jake mentioned earlier, we'll work with people on their transition to things like UX or conversational design or strategy on either the brand or a product side, or perhaps it's a product or a project management role. It sort of runs the gamut. And I think what we try to do is offer clarity and a bit more visibility into what it's like to be in one of those roles. What skills are transferable, and in what areas do you need to skill up? So often with the case, or with something like UX, for example, there are things you just don't know, right? So we say this fairly often. I think I said this earlier on a client call today, which is you don't know what you don't know. And often in that case, you will take or will recommend, a boot camp or something that can help not only establish the lingo, but a fairly comprehensive baseline of those skills and how to perhaps foray that into also your architectural background. Some of it, however, or some transitions, however, don't require something like going back to school or taking a class or a certificate. It's rather just honing in on a certain set of skills that you've always had. You've just never thought about them as, the focus of what it is that you do. And now this process is fairly can be fairly uncomfortable, but what we liken it to is the design process, whereas there's all this uncertainty, there's all this, potential risk, there's, moments of clarity, but for the most part, you are simply iterating, whether it's in your career or in your design process, on what your next steps are. And I think often when we phrase it that way, I think a lot of our clients, I won't say snap out of it because it's not like it's a trance, but I think they realize that they've really been doing this all along, just often not in the context of who they are and how they work.
And I think also to your question, Georgi, if you ask us for a timeline, it is very much, our duty to respond, that is up to you. We start this process with clients in varying stages. Some of them are actively interviewing and looking at offers, but some of them are still in very much the throes of a long-term, career employment with either one company or a series in architecture. And I think sometimes it is a longer discussion of, if you want to be, let's say, in this case, like an architectural visualization specialist, and you don't have those skills, or you said you want to make digital art, what are the things that you can do to bridge the gap between that future and where you are now? And some of that might be a little bit scary for architects who have seen themselves as full-time. A lot of our clients take a step into freelance or contract work where they go, one step beyond being a full-time architect. Maybe they take that transition. They're trying to build an enterprise, a company for themselves. I think in this case, I would point to you and say that your podcast is very much a step like that. I mean, taking the time, isolating yourself from working 100-hour week, an 80-hour week, and giving yourself maybe a step to a firm that respects those boundaries, that allows you to use your free time creatively. That can often be the very first step into this future. I think beyond that, if it's a skill-based thing, maybe it is UX, maybe it is digital media, how can you position yourself so that maybe some of your work, maybe it is freelance, maybe it is at your full-time job, starts to take on the flavor of whatever it is that you'd like to do in the future. So maybe you push your administration, your organization to allow you to do a little bit more rendering, do a little bit more graphics work. I think you can sell your value even internally to a company in a way that, okay, yeah, I can see that. Let's put you on this project. You're going to do your main work, but also we're going to give you this opportunity to tackle some things that are more creative, more artistic. And if you do that either internally or you go and you find clients like that, you start to very, little by little build a brand around yourself and to build that position that you really want. I think Erin is a perfect example of this, where she now has a business that touches, what I think many people would be considered to be 5 or 10 different jobs. I mean, she's not only, here on this podcast for Out of Architecture as a co-founder and a coach, but working on graphics and branding and all of these other elements. And people often ask us how we got to these positions. I feel the same way about my role at Adidas. I was able to step into a position that is a technical managerial role that was intended for someone with really strong footwear experience, knowledge of mold making and casting. But just by presenting my value internally, I was able to shift the tone of my job and the tone of our organization to focus more on creative projects, to work with the design teams and the innovation teams, and to bring in things that I'm passionate about, like, robotics and computational design. And I think just, to the listeners, like, you have more power than you might suppose. You are not tied to the job description that you signed when you entered a company. Things are always changing, and if you can see a way to provide value that also builds your skills, that's the best for everyone.
I agree, and I have had already a guest that have given us some suggestions in that direction. We have had Julia De Mauro on our podcast. She's the founder of the International Business Development Company, and she was giving this exact same suggestion that you maybe, if you want to do something, maybe a great option is to start doing it at the company where you are and try to brand yourself in the direction you want to go. But what I'm curious, because clearly your business is something different. It's more like about career oriented and individual oriented. Her was more like company within architecture oriented. And I'm curious, the people who come to you, are they more like, maybe it's both, you can tell me better after I have explained it, but Is it more like people that come to you and they say like, I want to achieve this within my profession? Or is it more like people that are more like, I want to achieve that within my lifestyle? Because, for example, one thing that I can imagine is that, I always say that we're creatives, but we're people. So that like we're not only architects that do architecture, we have a life, we have kids, we have girlfriends, wives, whatever, a life. So do some people come to you and tell you, look, I'm tired of these crazy hours and I want to do a job that's more human because I want to spend actually my time with my wife and kids? Or rather people that come to you and be like, I work at this job and I hate my tasks and I would rather do some different task. And also, does this approach clarifies if what the clients have in their mind, what they want to do, it's actually the right direction?
So we get a healthy mix of both, as well as some other different maybe different platforms by which people are operating from. We really do. We get some people who are just totally burnt out, right? And they're saying, yes, I've reached either a certain point in my life where I want to spend more time with my family, or I actually reached a point in my life where I thought I'd be a little bit further along in my career and, from a salary or a compensation standpoint, or maybe even just a life flexibility standpoint. And that burnout really does exist. And we will typically get that in clients who are, 5 to 7 years out. We will also get clients who just want to talk through what the actual options are. Sometimes we'll get people who have found us and said, wow, I'm shocked this exists. And I really just wanted to talk to you guys about what it may mean. And those are usually fun conversations because we get to throw, all these different ways in which you can be an architect or an ex-architect out there in the world. Many times we're working with clients not only on their brief as it pertains to, what salary would you like to be making or where would you like to live, but also how do you want to spend your days? An exercise we do with a lot of our clients, especially when they want some clarity into how to hone down on either certain tracks or different roles. We say, hey, take out your sketchbook or open up your calendar app on your phone and go a couple years in the future, maybe 2 years in the future. Or if their search is something that's a bit more urgent, we'll just say next year. And just fill out your week. Put your work stuff in there. But if you want to be doing, the example we always use is hot yoga, although neither of us have ever done hot yoga. If you want to be doing hot yoga twice a week, put that on there. If you want to be spending one day out of the office, working from home, put that on there. If you want to be sure that you're home by a certain time to get your kids at the school bus, put that on there. And just fill out your dream week and put your work stuff on there too. We've had, people who've said, hey, I want to split my time, half of it working in a fabrication studio or in a lab and the other half in the office. And that, I think, really helps reframe and visualize how much people really do want to enjoy their lives. I love that you say, we're not just architects, we're designers, we're people too. And I think if more people said that, we'd be probably better off earlier on, especially when we're talking to people about how they want to envision their lives. And I think the sooner you do that in your life, the better.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great point. And I'm one thing that I was thinking about it. It's that I I'm who listen to the podcast more often knows that I'm very straight on the point guy. And this is the whole point about the podcast. Be like the creative insider. It's the title itself says that we want to talk to creatives, not only architects, because we believe in the interdisciplinary conversation, and I think that also you fit within this grid because, of course, you connect architects to other fields of business or creativity. And let's say I'm a person that wants to. I come from a family that, let's say, money has always been a back thought. It's never been like, oh, we're not gonna care about this. And let's say I'm somebody that really loves what you have just explained, your process, and I want to join a program. In what range do you price your consultancy? Because also this is another topic that maybe a lot of the people that, you know, I come also from Bulgaria, which is an Eastern European country, and there you don't consult professionals for this kind of problems. You just toughen up. And a lot of people think like that. They think I'm gonna toughen up and pull through. I don't need a coach, I don't need a consultant, I'm gonna figure out my way. So what are the advantages of hiring you as consultancy, and in what kind of price range can people imagine to be in so that they can enjoy your consultation?
I love the idea that we might just tell someone to suck it up and then send them a bill for $1,000. And so if, you know, if we ever enter the Eastern European market, then that's exactly the new pricing strategy.
They wouldn't come to you. They would just be like, I don't need consultation. I suck it up.
Okay, wonderful. Well, so our business model, I mean, and all our pricing is very transparent. We sort of hang our hat on pay transparency. I mean, we talk about salaries every day. We think that money is one of the most important things that creatives can talk about to support one another, because there is so much competition and there is so much undercutting of other creatives to, you know, get the best project, that instead of charging the most to get the best project, we always end up taking the least for the privilege of getting that project. Erin and I charge $250 an hour. We technically kind of have no constraints to that. It is for the work that we do with, working with people in their visioning or on their materials, on their portfolios, their resumes. But we also have tried as much as possible to, while maintaining the value of our time, create a lens of accessibility for the work that we do. Obviously, as a student, that's sort of a very high price point. We have a reduced rate that we offer to students, and when they reach out to us, we're happy to kind of have those conversations. We also have created a system by which we allow for unemployed clients who are actively in their search to defer payment. And we've tried to structure the business so that there is value at all stages. Even in this kind of introductory call, we provide immense, amounts of advice, sometimes unsolicited, unrequested advice from our clients, like, no, you definitely shouldn't do that. That's a terrible idea. But in recent months, the business has grown exponentially. And as part of that, we've had the opportunity to create more, not only content like this, which I think is beneficial to a lot of people. And so I would also say thank you for inviting us on here to kind of talk about these issues. But really, we've started to do some more work with schools, architectural universities, and doing some workshops and conversations where we incept the idea that maybe they might not want to only be architects. Maybe they want to go and work on other challenging creative issues. And so the pricing has sort of led us to this point where we're actually opening up now beyond the one-on-one session. So we've developed a series of group workshops, which are at a much lower price point, especially for early career professionals. And we charge about $60 for entry into those workshops, where we sort of have this kind of conversation, but a little bit more explicitly. As an example, today, Erin and I had, intros with several different people. One of them, we talked about very specific negotiation for their salary, talking about New York ranges. Is 65,000 even, appropriate for someone with X number of years of experience in New York? I think when we talk about the cost of living in various cities, that's a huge, it's a huge relief for some people to be able to have a place to really discuss something that culturally, like, we don't discuss over dinner. I think money is a terrifying thing for a lot of people, but it's also to the benefit of the companies, that we don't talk about it as individual employees. I think the more that employees discuss the benefits and the pay at various locations, the more power we have to make decisions for ourselves. Doesn't mean the companies have to change their pay necessarily, but it does mean that you get to choose whether taking $40,000 to work at a starchitecture firm versus $75,000 to work at a pretty good large scale firm is the right decision for you and your family, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we all have other people in our lives, friends, family, who rely on us, and just creating stability for yourself can provide value to those people. Sometimes it's not just monetary, it's having the mental space to not be worried about money, not be worried about work, and dedicate that to your friends and loved ones. I think there are so many aspects of value that, we don't cover. But back to, I guess, the idea of pricing is, it might seem like a lot, but we're taking our clients from a position oftentimes of a feeling of either powerlessness or lack of direction, and putting them on the right track. Sometimes it takes one session, sometimes it takes 3 or 4, but over the course of that time, the evolution is really great. And I think we have yet to have a client come back to us and tell us that they didn't get more than their fair share of value out of what they put in. So that's been a really positive experience so far.
And so to say, to wrap it up a little bit, what you mentioned, you do workshops, and how can this session look like? Because also, and do you have, when you do a call, do you tell your clients what could, in their case, what could be amount of session that's going to be needed? Because as you said, the price, it's quite high end into the joining, which it's also probably good because expensive things usually end up being good. We have a way of saying you pay a few and it's not a good service, then better positioning is
Yes.
usually also a sign of quality. What can I expect if I join you for a 1 hour session? How it's going to look like a one-on-one? And we would be only with you, or we would be both you? Who is going to be? How it's going to look like this 1 hour of session?
So we typically do all of our career consultations together. So our 1 hour sessions are the two of us, and then usually the before time or the prep time for that is often both of us as well. Just sort of, we've had an intro call with the person, we know a bit about them and their search, and then we do a ton of research. Sometimes we have specific action items based on the intro call, and sometimes, they're really coming to us for some advice and perhaps some connections and some roles. So it will somewhat vary depending on where the person is in their search and what they're hoping to get out of the call. We do not often tell people, hey, this is going to take 5 sessions, because it really kind of depends. It depends on the person. It depends on how quickly the process moves. We will give some time estimates that we know to just be benchmarks based on, the city that they're looking in and how specific their search is. We'll often tell people, from application to date of hire, if everything goes really super well, you're looking at 60 to 65 days, right? So think of it as a 2-month time frame. So sometimes our clients will come to us and say, hey, I really want to make a change, but I want to do it, I'm getting married next month, or I'm graduating, or this, and I really want to start this, 2 months or 4 months down the line. I want to be in my new role by, the new year. So we'll say, all right, that's great. We'll follow up with you, in 8 weeks or so. And in the meantime, we'll keep an eye on things. We'll also have clients or calls with potential clients that, it's not necessarily the best fit at that time, but we always tell them, you're in our network. connect with us on LinkedIn. If you see somewhere a role that you're really interested in and you happen to see that we're connected to someone there, please just send us a message or an email, and we'll be happy to connect you with that person or give you some advice. After we have our initial kind of first call with our clients, there's a lot of informal emailing back and forth that we don't really bill for. We'll always be upfront with anything that, is maybe an ask that would require a significant amount of time, but we are constantly connecting people and offering some advice. Sometimes it's even just a pep talk via email or a quick phone call to make sure that, before they go into that job interview, hey, just remember you were going to say X, Y, Z, and, remember that we've got this on the back burner. So, no worries, you're going to go in there, you're going to kill it. So yeah, it really is independent of sort of our process and very much what the individual person is hoping to get out of it and how much sort of support they need.
Sounds good. So now, after this conversation with you guys, at least I have some knowledge about what to do, who to contact in case I want to get out of architecture or move within architecture. I want to thank you for participating on the show. I always like to say to guests that this is your first time doesn't mean it has to be the last one. So all the guests are always welcome to come back and tell some new story when they have something to announce, so just come back for a chat. But last but not least, can you tell people where they can find you and contact you online within your websites or social media?
Absolutely. So you can find Erin and I both individually on LinkedIn, which we absolutely love because it is one of the best places for connecting with people and networking around your career. You can find Out of Architecture at outofarchitecture.com or our Out of Architecture Instagram. And we also make an appearance on the Architechy Slack channel once in a while. So a little drop there. If you are an architect looking to go into tech, you're welcome to join the club and see us floating around the Slack channels.
Perfect. So I'm going to be adding all the links in the description of the podcast so that people can just go and click you and contact you. And thank you very much. I wish you a good day over there in the US.
Thank you, Georgi. It was so nice chatting with you.
Yes, thank you. It was really wonderful to have this conversation.
Bye-bye.
The whole world stops just like that.
Hey you, thank you very much for listening to this episode. You've been amazing. I want to remind you that if you want to contact us and tell us how are you and how did you like the podcast and what could we do better, you can contact us on our social media, which are Instagram at TCI Podcast and the LinkedIn page, The Creative Insider. You can also join our newsletter on our website, thecreativeinsider.com, or feel free to contact us at hello@thecreativeinsider.com. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good week once again. Bye-bye.
The whole world stops. like that.